Hello artists! This week, let's learn how to add the illusion of 3D with the power of shading. When you are adding shading, you are showing what part of your object is being lit up and what part is in shadow. The part that's in shadow is what we're adding the shading to. So, to help you find this out, you have to use your imagination and think about where the lights are. Is it the sun? A ceiling light? Maybe a campfire? All of these create light. Once you know where the light is, you can find out where the light is coming from. And then picture an arrow coming out of that light source and hitting the side of your object. This is called the highlight. It's the side that gets lit up. The other side is usually darker since there is less light shining on it. This is the side we need to add our shading to. Now, this isn't always true, especially if there's lots of different lights. But this week, we're going to try to keep it simple and pretend there's only one light source. So, to start, let's practice together. Open to a blank page in your sketchbook, and we're going to go ahead and trace our hand with our pencil. Now, if you'd like a couple pointers on tracing, I'd like to show you real quick. It's really easy. First, don't hold your pencil like you normally would. When you hold your pencil, I'm going to use a marker so you can see, but you're going to use a pencil, and when you hold it, typically you hold it on a diagonal. We want ours straight up and down when we trace, and I'll show you right here. If I were to have my pencil like I normally would with my pencil on diagonal, when I trace, you're going to notice that the pencil actually goes underneath your finger, making it skinnier than it actually is. That's because your finger's round. You can see how the pencil curved around and it didn't get an exact tracing. But if I instead had my pencil straight up and down, so it's rubbing against the side of my finger and not going underneath it, you're going to get a much better tracing of whatever it is you're tracing. So careful not to go underneath. Make sure it's going side by side. Oh. Alright, now we have a hand tracing. This is all we need to color, but like I said, if you want, you can study your hands and you can trace some details. My fingers are a little dirty. I was raking leaves yesterday, so don't mind my fingernails. But looking at the top of my hand, maybe I can add in some fingernails. This is a fun little exercise too for studying detail in your hand. Like, ooh, let me try to get some of those wrinkles. You don't have to do this part if you want. If you just want to keep your hands simple, you can. I think it's kind of fun to add a couple wrinkles here and there. Makes it look more realistic. Just a couple short lines. They don't go all the way across, but it's enough to make it look like a real hand. Alright, now that your hand is traced, let's go ahead and add some shading. But careful not to get ahead. Each finger is going to get its own different type of shading. But first, we need to find out where that light is. So let's pretend that there is a light shining from the left-hand side of my paper. To help me picture that, I'm going to draw a little sun. And you can picture the sun light shining in this direction, lighting up the sides of all these fingers. The other side is what's going to be added, is going to be where we add our shading. So, let's start with our thumb first. So for this, I'm going to use a pencil, and we're going to add some shading here. Now, if you've never done this before, it's kind of fun. All you have to do is just take your pencil and very, very lightly, maybe medium hard, I'm just going to color in the edge. And I'm just kind of coloring left and right, all along the edge. Try to get close to the edge. I'm really kind of coloring it in. And I'm going to go all the way down the side of my wrist. And something like that. Now, it already kind of looks like it's in shadow, but there are more than just two colors when it comes to shading. Right now we have gray and white. We need to create all the different shades of gray in between. We call this value. So to help create value, we're going to do some smudging. So you take a finger and just kind of rub along the edge. I like to go up and down next to it. You might need to press a little harder. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the dust of that graphite from the tip of our pencil and I'm kind of pushing it around with my finger, smudging it around, and you can see it kind of softens it, almost makes it look a little blurrier. That looks already a little bit better. I got some white, and then some light gray, and then some darker gray. You can even go back again. And maybe instead of coloring the whole thing, I'm going to do an even skinnier part. So I can go across this and add an even darker line of graphite. And then I can blend that in. And then you have lots of different shades of gray for this shading. Okay? Alright. So that's one way of adding shading, using your pencil to blend it. And I know some of you have tried that already, but these next fingers are things you might not have tried yet. So, last week, we took a weird quiz with words like hatching and stippling. But what does that mean? Well, these are the other ways of adding shading to a picture. You see these all the time with comic book artists, or any artist who uses marker or pen to add shading to their picture. Now, with pencil you can smudge, but with pen, not so easy. So we have to do a couple of tricks to get the illusion of shading. So we're going to learn the first trick. On this first finger right here, we're going to do something called hatching. And hatching is when you have lines going all in the same direction. The trick to creating the shades of gray is by moving these lines closer and closer together to make them look darker. See how that looks darker and it looks like it's getting lighter and lighter? And in fact, I could move these way far apart to make it look even lighter still. That is what I want to try on this finger, so watch me first. I'm going to go ahead and add some diagonal hatching along the finger. You can always go back and add more if you want. Try to keep it evenly spaced. And to get the darker shades, all we have to do is color in more hatches, maybe just shorter ones. I'll do another row of shorter hatches. And then you get the illusion that there's shading there. Cross hatching is just like hatching, only our lines crisscross. That's why it's called cross hatching. So it just gives us another direction to darken stuff up a bit more. In fact, sometimes you can go from a third direction to add even more value. Let's look to see how that looks on this finger. So it's going to start just like our index finger here, with just normal diagonal hatching. But this time, I can go from this other direction to add more lines. Now, artists tend to mix these two up. Sometimes they'll do more hatching, sometimes they'll do more cross-hatching. Really up to which one you like the look of more. Let's look at the third finger. For this one, we're going to use a technique called scumbling. It's a fun word to say. Instead of using lines to create the values, we're going to use curly lines. The tighter you pack those curls together, the darker it looks. And the looser you go with those, the lighter and lighter it can look. It's a very loose, very scribbly kind of look, but it's controlled. I'm not going everywhere. I'm controlling where the scribbling goes. So yes, I do say don't scribble, but you can scribble if you're being careful. Alright, so I'm going to do some tight scribbles along the edge where it's darkest. And then I'll do a row that's a little bit bigger and looser where it's a little bit... Alright, so That is scumbling. And the final one, stippling. Stippling is by using a bunch of little tiny dots to add value. The closer you put the dots together, the darker it looks, and the farther apart you put those dots, the lighter it looks, like this example here. Now, this effect tends to look the most realistic if you take your time with it. It is, however, the one that takes the most time to do, so you gotta be patient. Alright, so those are 5 ways of adding shading. First, find where the light is, then add the shading to the opposite side. Practice in your sketchbook with your hand, and then maybe go back to some of your other projects and think about adding some hatching or cross-hatching effects to them to make those look more realistic. Alright, for this week's assignment, I'm just looking for a hand shading project turned in. Okay? Can't wait to see the results from all your shading this week. Until next time.